What's going on, guys? John Elder here from Codemy.com, and in this video, we're going to start to look at the Kivy Design Language. All right, guys, like I said, in this video, we're going to start to look at the Kivy Design Language. But before we get started, if you like this video and want to see more like it, be sure to smash the like button below, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, and check out Codemy.com, where I have dozens of courses with hundreds of videos that teach you to code. Use coupon code YouTube1 to get $30 off membership. That's all my courses, videos, and books. One-time fee at just $49, which is insanely cheap. Okay, we are moving right along with our Kivy tutorials here, and in this video, we're going to start to look at the Kivy Design Language. And I kind of talked about it a little bit in the last video, didn't get into the details. But the Kivy Design Language allows us to sort of abstract away all of the design elements in our code so that our actual Python code here is just Python, right? Instead of like trying to set all of these, different designy things like font size and height and all of these things, we could put all that in another file and it sort of take care of it for us. And it's just a best practices to always try and keep your design stuff and your code stuff separate. And sort of think of this like CSS and HTML. If you're familiar with HTML, you know all website design stuff is like CSS. It goes in a CSS file, and then we reference that on the HTML file, which is just the bare bones of the website itself. So kind of the same way, sort of think of it like that. So I've got the same code that we worked on in the last video. I've called this file design.py using the Sublime Text Editor and the Git Bash terminal as always. So let's come through here and start to clean this stuff up. So let's see, we've got all of these widgets listed. So actually, let's take out all of this stuff that we've been working on in the last few videos, all of our widgets, right? And the button. And I'm gonna leave, when we press the button, this little method here, right? But I'm gonna take everything else out. Now, so we've got our My Grid layout, and we still got our main My App class here with our build method in here. So we need to change this from grid layout to widget. We no longer want to inherit grid layout. We want to inherit widget. Now we don't have widget up here, so we need to import it. So let's go from kivy.uix.widget. We want to import capital widget, right? Okay. Now this is, we'll look at this a little bit later. But okay, we're essentially starting over, right? So let's save this and run it. We can run python design.py. And when we do, we just get a blank app here, right? So we're basically starting over. So what we need to do is create a separate file for our Kivy design file. And we can come up here and file, new file, and we get a blank file. Now we need to name this a very specific way. So here's our main class with our my app, right? It's got our build method in there. Right? Whatever you called this, you need to call your Kivy design file sort of the same thing. It needs to be, unless you use the word app, right? We called this my app, so we remove the app part, and we're just going to call our Kivy design file my.kv. All right, so let's come back over here. Let's go File, Save As, and let's save this as my.kv, right? And we want to save this in the same Kivy GUI directory that we saved this file. Right, so if we called this one elder, we would call our Kivy file elder.kv. And notice the lowercase. Always want to keep it lowercase, right? But we didn't. We called this my app. So our Kivy file is my.kv. It's not my app.kv. That will throw an error. I'm not really sure why they built it that way, but if you used app on here, take the app part off and just call your Kivy file my.kv. So, okay, we've got that. Now let's come over to this file. And we want to start out by sort of putting a tag here to reference what grid layout we want to play with. And we called our grid layout here, my grid layout, right? So we can copy this, bring it over here, slap it in this little tag, and we're good to go. Now, we indent everything in the Kivy design file, right? And by indenting, I mean hitting the tab key on your keyboard. Notice how when I hit the tab key once, boom, it pops it over. I am not hitting the space bar a bunch of times. Do not do that. You have to use the tab key. It's very specific and very important, right? Python is tab sensitive, and especially so here, you have to use the tab bar. I don't know how many times I've had problems with students in the past who use the space bar to just space over. You cannot do that here. You have to use the tab key. So inside of here, we can do whatever we want, right? So let's try and recreate the app that we did earlier, right? So remember there was 3 labels and 3 input boxes and a button. So we start out by creating a grid layout, and you put a colon there, right? And then hit enter. And now tab over inside of this grid layout, we can just sort of start defining all the things we want. And we start out, how many columns do we want? We want 1 column, right? Just like before, we're gonna have 1 column, and then we're gonna put another grid layout inside of there with 2 columns, just like we did earlier, right? Same sort of thing. So then inside of this grid layout, we want to put another grid layout. And inside of that one, we want it to be 2 columns, right? So same thing we did in the last video, or a couple videos ago, where we created 2 grid layouts and put one inside of the other. By indenting this right here, we're putting it inside of this one. That's how this works, by indentation, right? If we put this like this would not be inside of this and it would be all messed up, right? But if we indent it, then the second grid layout with 2 columns is going to be inside this main grid layout with 1 column. Okay, following me? So inside of this grid layout, we can now label the things that we want. So we want a label, right? And we can tab over. That label needs to have text of, and let's say name, right? And you'll notice I put a space here and I did not put a space here. You could put a space there. I just, for numbers, for some reason, I tend to not put spaces, and for strings, I do, just to help me read it easier, but that's how this works. So we had a label. Now we also had a text input. And for that, remember, we put multi-line equals false. And again, you could put a space or not. It doesn't really matter, right? So this will put in 2 columns, in column 1, the label, and in column 2, the text input. Now we had 3 of these guys, so I'm just gonna copy this and sort of paste it 3 times. Make sure you get your indentations correct here. This other one was favorite pizza and multi-line false, and this one was favorite color, multi-line false. Okay, we also had a button, but we want that button to be in our main grid layout. So it will span both of them, remember how we did that? So instead of indenting it inside of this guy, we want to indent it inside of this guy. So let's come down here and bop it over. And this is going to be a button. And we want the text of that button to say submit. And then we'll work on the functionality in just a little bit. We just want to put this up onto the screen for now. So, okay, that's good. And you'll notice, just sort of follow this line of this button here. It's even with this second grid layout indented inside of our grid layout, our main grid layout, right? This button is not inside of here like these guys are, right? It's sort of outside that way, right? So, okay, let's go ahead and save this file. Let's go ahead and make sure this file is saved, and let's run this. And you'll notice in here, we haven't done anything to reference this file. Kivy just knows to look for it in the same directory based on whatever you named this. So it's looking for a my.kiv file anyway by default. It just knows to do that. So we don't have to actually reference it anywhere in this file. So, okay, let's go ahead and run this, see if that worked. Uh-oh, got an error. Unknown class grid layout. Here we go. This needs to be capital L. Capital L here, capital L there. Okay. It's the day after the election. I'm exhausted. Stayed up late watching the results, and there were no results. Okay, so anyway, here we go. We've got this, and it's all crammed into one little area down here. We click the button, nothing actually works. So it looks right, but this is obviously wrong. So we need to blow this up and make it the size of the entire app. And we can do that pretty easily. Let's head over here to our Kivy design file. And inside of this first grid layout where it has 1 column, we can set the size for this whole thing. We can go size, and then we want this to be width and height, but we want it to be the width and the height of the entire app, the root app. So we go root.width and root.height. Probably want to spell root right. There we go. And that should do the trick. So let's go ahead and save this and run it. See what this looks like. And now, boom, it's expanded for the whole thing. We see submit, and we're good to go. Now notice this is small font. If we wanted to change that, we could head back over here to our button and we could go font underscore size and set that to, I think we had it at 32 before, and we could run this now. And boom, our text is big again for the submit button. And that's really all there is to it. So much, much easier to sort of abstract all this away and keep your design stuff in its own sort of file, and pretty easy. Now, we're gonna learn all of these things, text input, label, button, all the things that go in here as we go on and learn more about this. In this video, I just want to show you a very basic sort of how to use this and sort of go from there. Now, our button doesn't actually work, and we can make it work if we want fairly quickly here. What we need to do is sort of, our Python app here doesn't understand what any of these things are. So we need to sort of very specifically point out, hey, we want to make these variables. And we do that by giving them IDs. So we can come up to our main grid layout right here, and let's define some variables. So we can call name, and this is going to be name. We'll give this one pizza, and it will be pizza. And this one will be color, and it will be color, right? And you'll see how these sort of reference each other in a minute. Now we need to come down to each text input box and define the ID. So this one is going to have an ID of name. This one is going to have an ID of pizza. And this one will have an ID of color. All right, so we can save this. Now we can almost use these, but we need to sort of make a quick change to our design file. Up here, we need to import something. Now, in order to use these, we need to use something called an object property, because these are going to be like little object-y things. So let's go from Kivy.properties. We want to import object property. And there we go, property. And now make sure the O and the P are capitalized. So now inside of our grid layout here, we can set up those variables. So we can go name equals, and this is going to be an object property. And we want to pass none in here because when the app starts, these things won't have any value until we type something in, right? So we'll set them as none. So let me just copy this 3 times. The other one was pizza, and the other one was color. Now, we've got our press sort of method in here that works from the last videos. In this case, we don't need to have an instance anymore. We just need to pass self. But then everything else pretty much stays the same. Now, we haven't set it up to print this onto the screen of the app, and that's a little bit more complicated. So instead of doing that, we'll talk about that later, let's just print it to the screen. So I'm going to grab all of the stuff that we output from the last couple of videos and just print this to the terminal, right? So get rid of that. So this will pass hello name, you like pizza, and your favorite color is color. This should output to the terminal. All the rest of these things stay the same. Okay, so that looks good. Now, one last thing we need to do, we need to call this function from our Kivy design file. So we called this function or method, whatever you want to call it, we called it press. So now we come down here to the actual button itself, and we go on_press like we did last time. We want to go root.press. And this is a little function. So we use our function parentheses. All right, so go ahead and save this. And again, this is press because we called this press, right? Okay, so save this file, save this file. Let's run this one more time. So we've got John. John likes pepperoni. And favorite color, let's say blue. Click the button, nothing happens in our app. These things disappear as we expect. But when we close this down in the terminal, it says, hello, John, you like pepperoni pizza and your favorite color is blue. So that works. We'll get into putting it on the screen later. This video is getting a little bit long, but I will point out really quickly, remember in the last video, we cleared these by putting self.name.text back to 0. That still works, even with the Kivy design file thing separate. So that's the Kivy design language. We're going to get into this in a lot greater detail. Going forward, we're probably going to end up using this method as opposed to the earlier method, but you really kind of needed to learn that earlier stuff in order for this to make more sense Otherwise, you'd be like, what are all of these things? What are grid layouts? What are calls? What are, labels, text input? What is all these things? So we needed that sort of groundwork before we could start using the Kivy design file, probably. But strictly speaking, this is probably a better way to do it. Again, you're abstracting your design elements away from your Python code, which is always a good idea. And this sort of seems weird, right? Lots of colons and indentations, but you'll get used to it really quickly. It's very similar to CSS. CSS has the same sort of colon system going on, right? The indentation is a little different, but it seems maybe a little overwhelming to have all this stuff on here, but really it will start to make sense when you start thinking in tabs. When we want something inside of something else, we just tab it in, and now it's in there. All right, we've got our second grid layout. We tab the stuff into that, right? And pretty cool. So that's all for this video. If you liked it, be sure to smash the like button below, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, and check out Codemy.com where you can use coupon code YouTube1 to get $30 off membership. So it pays just $49 to access all my courses, over 47 courses, hundreds of videos, and the PDFs of all my best-selling coding books. Join over 100,000 students learning to code just like you. My name is John Elder from Codemy.com, and I'll see you in the next video.